Basu Godin Notebook. 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 Basu Godin Notebook.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Basu Godin Notebook. I'm Marc-Antoine Godin with Arp and Basu on this Monday, December 8th. After one of those weird back-to-back weekends, the Canadians have, three of them over the course of
It
this
was
month?
the first of three back-to-back weekends. Yes,
I'm not sure I like it, but that's
I mean they have to do it. It's
they
that's
have
all,
to do it.
That's all there is. The schedule is what it is, and the schedule is favorable for them to start. Far less favorable now. So I think I said it before on the show. If they get to Christmas having played for 500 hockey in December, I would consider that a big accomplishment.
Yeah. And to me, it's more how they're going to play. The results, I mean, I hope that they're going to be there for their sake, but the manner in which that they're playing. I mean, I told you on Friday that to me the crux of the issue would be that they needed to righten the ship defensively, and they needed to have a game early in that sprint of that heavy schedule. They needed to have a game that they could use as a blueprint in order to have a fresh example of how they must play defensively in order to have success. And boom, right away in Toronto, I think that they delivered exactly the sort of defensive performance that they can try to recreate after and say, okay, we know that it worked in Toronto. This is our formula, or like Marty likes to say, this is our recipe. They brought all the ingredients and they were successful. And you could argue that, save for 39 seconds against St. Louis, they brought it to against the Blues on Sunday. So all in all, in terms of defensive awareness and tightening things up defensively, it's been a pretty satisfying weekend in that aspect.
Well, I mean, this quote from Marty after the game on Saturday, I think is pretty telling. Obviously he thought it was the best defensive game of the season for his team, which is fine. That's debatable, but it was very good. And so, but when he said, I thought tonight, did we raise the standards in that department? My guess is yes. Now it's up to the players to keep those standards. And that's, I guess, a big part of what we saw on Sunday against the Blues. You take out and you can't just take out the start of the second period. That was awful. That was really, really bad, to start a period that way. But the vast majority of that game, what you just said about the game in Toronto, applied against the Blues, and those standards were maintained in that sense, other than those two quick goals to start the second, which ultimately sunk them. But I think the schedule is worth mentioning too, because Marty didn't agree with me, but you go back and you look at the game against Toronto. Through 40 minutes, the Canadians dominated that game, and then the third period was more or less even. I thought through 40 minutes against St. Louis, the Canadians dominated that game, other than that little spurt at the start of the second. And the third period, with the Canadians chasing the game and needing a goal to tie it, it was more or less even. So the reality of the schedule is going to make it so, and both teams were on a back-to-back. Let's be clear. Both teams had to travel from not too far away. The Blues were in Ottawa the night before, so they were playing kind of on equal footing in that regard. But like with the schedule being the way it is, the Canadians are going to have to use that improvement in the defensive zone to build leads early and maybe try and hang on late, because they're not going to have the legs in the third to push the way they did on the weekend through 40 minutes. There was a definite lull, and it was more striking against the Blues because they needed a goal, and they lost some of the. I think they were kind of deflated by all the shifts they spent in the Blues zone in the second period, and buzzing and creating chances, and Demidov was stoned on two separate occasions by Binnington, and they had a number of opportunities to get one there. and they appeared to run out of gas in the third, and I think this is going to be a reality in a lot of games this month. If they play that way through 40 minutes, they have to come out of it with a lead and then try and hang on late and really lean into that defensive zone improvement and the defensive improvement in general to try and close out games that they're leading in the third, because they might not have enough gas to chase games in the third this month.
Yeah. I think that the game in Toronto, what was interesting, even though they won in the shootout, I think that the fact that they won a game, a low scoring affair, that's great because, they have to be able to win games by allowing one or two goals. I mean, it's striking. You look at it; they haven't had a shutout yet this season, but at least
Mm-hmm.
they gave up only one goal against Toronto. They gave up two against Winnipeg, so that's an improvement. And even though, I mean, yeah, they eventually gave up four against St. Louis, I thought that they still checked rather well. A few brain cramps here and there, and goals that, frankly, Dobesh couldn't do much about. Uh, but overall, I think that it was encouraging. They're in a stretch right now over the last 7 days where the corrections that it was hoping they would do, they seem to be doing. Um, but yeah, I mean, the Blues were playing also on the back to back, and you talk about the level of energy and all that, sure. But at the same time, by the time that the Blues made it 4-2, you could the Canadians' offense really turned it up, and you could tell for the last 8 or 9 minutes there was a level of urgency that you didn't see for the first half of the third period. And when you're playing catch up hockey and you know how beatable this opponent is, and he's in the same situation as you, it's not as though he's rested and basically you're out there just surviving. Well, if that urgency had been seen from the get go in the third period, well, maybe they would not have given up that fourth goal. But I thought overall the the, the urgency lacked a little bit in the third. I texted you at that point. You said, "Well, it's normal because they're on the back to back, both teams." But I mean, this is going to be their reality for the next little while. So yeah, they'll.
And I thought the fourth goal was almost a result of the urgency. Carey tries to hold the puck in the neutral zone, steps up, Veleno's coming back to cover for him, gets knocked down, domino effect, 2-on-1 goal. I mean, it's kind of, that's what happens when you have to open up a little bit to try and chase the game and take a little bit of a risk. I saw Veleno catching some flack for that play. I don't understand why. He was in the right position. He was covering for his guy. He didn't really do anything wrong other than winding up on the ice. And that kind of created this sort of domino effect of people falling behind the play. Carrier trying to get back fell. Veleno was on the ice. The guy, I forget who it was that knocked him down, but he was on the ice. There were like 3 or 4 players on the ice. And meanwhile, Jackie's alone to defend a 2-on-1, which is, all due respect to Jackie, is probably the last defenseman you want to be in that situation, and did the best he could, but couldn't prevent the pass from getting across. And Braden Shen had pretty much an open net to shoot at. So, that's the result of, but I agree that was there enough, like we saw more of that urgency in the second period. And that's the thing, is that, they went down so early in that second, but they still dominated that second period.
Yes.
Right. And
Yep.
and we're pushing to tie that game. And I feel like, especially with a similar situation the night before in Toronto, where they dominated that second period and could not get the separation and could not get the offense, the actual tangible offense goals on the scoreboard that their play warranted. At some point it's hard to maintain that. Like you can't just keep pushing, and then when you're not getting rewarded, eventually the other team's going to push back, right? And so it's like they had done that for a long time, and I'm sure, and don't forget, like the Blues basically got spanked in Ottawa the night before. They had something to prove as well, and so it's like it's at some point you have to expect the other team to not allow that anymore. And so that's a part of it, and I think that happened in Toronto. They took a punch in the face, and they were like, okay, let's punch back now. And they did push back in the third, as is normal. They're an NHL hockey club, a good one, frankly. And And even though St. Louis, St. Louis isn't as bad as their record suggests and isn't as bad as their season suggests, there's good players on that team, and they're kind of sick of how their season's going. So I think they deserve some credit for how they played in the third as well, in protecting a lead and playing responsible, mature hockey with a 1-goal lead on the road on the back end of a back-to-back. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to close things out. You're supposed to make the game dull and ride it out until an opportunity presents itself. The third period the Blues played was a perfect road period, and when you're up a goal, and the Canadians couldn't generate a whole lot against that. I don't know if I think the Blues deserve more credit for that than the Canadians warrant criticism for that, personally.
But another tricky, I don't know that we mentioned it on the previous episode about time on ice management with this heavy schedule, but you bring up Carrier, who's still trying to figure things out. He's not having a good season so far. Played only 16
He's been better
minutes
of late, I feel.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit better.
A little bit better.
I think so.
But he played 16 minutes against the Blues. That's on a back-to-back. And you already have two guys. I mean, Jack-Eye 1046, Struble 1457.
Yeah.
You're just playing three guys a ton. It's always the same guys. I feel like they're completely different players, but I feel as though Dobson, Matheson, and Hudson were back almost to Weber, Petrie, Sherratt in terms of those three guys are going just to play a ton, and we'll see what's left for the other ones after. But, gosh, we're not even halfway point in the season. There's a ton of back-to-backs, a lot of a big compressed schedule. I hope that either Carrier is going to really step up and correct himself, or Struble is going to gain some extra trust that will earn him extra minutes. But those three guys will need some help even before Caden Gooley comes back, because it's the pressure, the demands on them is pretty daunting.
I don't think Struble helped himself this weekend. It's the most tentative I've seen Struble. There was one instance on Saturday. There was a loose puck in the neutral zone. He was by far the closest player to that puck. He had one, if not two steps on the Leafs player coming from the other side. He just hung back and waited for, I forget which Leafs player it was, but did not go for that puck at all. It was a similar instance against St. Louis where he just showed some tentativeness. Like, it just seems like his emphasis is to not make a mistake right now. And you can't play effective hockey when all you're worried about is making mistakes. Arbor Jack-Eye, kind of the same thing. Like, he says he's not thinking that way, but some of his decisions on the ice, some of the plays he makes suggest otherwise. And frankly, he leans on Carrier because of that, like Jack-Eye does, because, his default is to just give the puck over to Carrier, which puts a lot of pressure on Carrier to be like a primary puck handler and a primary puck mover on that line. It's not really his MO. It's not really what he does the best. It's not his thing, but that's kind of his role on that line. And I think, having that to play with the puck so much, and he kind of admitted, like, I don't feel confident carrying the puck recently. So yeah, it's not ideal. But having said that, I thought that was Noah Dobson's best game in weeks. No, maybe not weeks, but maybe 2 weeks. I don't know, but in a while. That's the best we've seen Noah Dobson in quite some time.